We had, so.
So would you like me to kind of walk through these,
Yeah,
Madam?
if you want to, obviously, we're gonna concur.
Well, yes, but then I had to argue with myself last night around what, and to make sure I understood why,
To
so.
be like that, what is going on TV, I am unanimous in this.
You'd be surprised how often sometimes I'm not.
With yourself.
Let me see, on the other hand, how many hands do I have?
Yeah, the 300,000, and I'm sure you got, you know, the background of why that came in when it did.
Yeah, and we just wanted to make sure that you and I may know, and I'm getting to know it a little bit better, and I've got incredibly helpful people all around me within the committee and every place else that has to give me a whole lot of information, but so if I don't write it down, sometimes I will forget it. But yeah, so we're definitely, we're okay with this, but we wanted to, you know, when the budget left the appropriations, our House Appropriations Committee, after that, as you've indicated, that the judiciary raised the rates. And then, of course, the corresponding need to fund those rates became apparent on your watch, and we're going to agree with the fact that that needs to get done, and that adds $300,000 to the Defender General's budget. And I, only because I found out this morning, is like, it has been since 1993 that I understand that the rates were at 50 and they just recently now have been raised. So that seems way overdue after 30 years. So we're okay with that. The possibly going forward, you know, Madam Chair, the things that we will agree with today and some of the money, I just wanted it to be clear that as we get maybe on Monday, some of the tougher things we may need to have to reopen subjects, but as it stands today, there's a lot of things that I think just to be able to get a lot more move forward, and I hope at 3 o'clock we can bring a lot more things that we can be okay with, but under the caveat, I wanted to make sure on the camera that possibly next Tuesday, there'll be things that might need to get reopened again. But you know, by both of us or one of us.
I understand that. In other words, if we find that we've got to find 100,000 or you know whatever to make it work, then we may have to go back and look at a haircut somewhere but not knowing how that's going, whether that would be necessary or the extent, then the more we can at least agree that this is an area that needs to somehow be altered a bit in the final, but getting it. So recognizing that, sure.
Not knowing some of the larger things that are a part of this end game, that we don't know where they're gonna land, but we need to, I'm also in agreement that we need to get moving.
Yeah.
Was that your, did you have some?
No.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I
That,
just fiddle with my glasses here, Madam Chair.
every now and then I'll catch them and I
Yeah.
miss people when they raise their hand and I.
And there are some here that you can't go back to for the out-of-state beds, that because of that double, you know. So there are
Exactly.
some that are, you know, are just.
They are what they are.
Are
They
are what they are, right?
Yes, so in the V204, which is the judiciary piece, we didn't initially respond to that, but it has come to our understanding since then, and people who have worked in this area to go find out that we agree, and that this is gonna help with the backlog. You know, those
What
are,
we've also discovered is that our legislation, particularly around this expungement,
Yeah.
has created a huge
Yes.
workload, and to go back, and it's not just one, sometimes there are multiple records. So what we're recognizing here is the work that got created by some of our own legislation on the board. So this is something our judiciary needs, and certainly Senator Sears is a long time, you know, involvement on this. So that's why we recognize the fact that some of the dilemma was because of our own decisions. And not to say that that wasn't an important policy, but it required consequences. Yeah, a lot of staff.
and I know that we had put 2 positions in, and it's been really, really clear after that there's more.
We're talking about the judge and the law
Yes,
clerk, yeah.
yes. So in the 205, which is the state's attorneys, and you may be noticing a theme here, and I'm trying to like like, maybe we can take all the judiciary and all these pieces, and as we move along in packages, sometimes have a focal point on a particular area. The original ask when the state attorneys came in and they sharpened their pencils and had more detail when they came over to the Senate. But when they came in their original testimony, they asked for 42 positions with with no detail and no cost analysis done on what they were, or how long. And so, I mean,
We did not fully fund even with.
Yeah. We don't have to agree.
we didn't, that was, okay, that was a shot in the way sky for that, but I think they just let us know. And we did not have all of the data that they later came about it. So we agree with the 7 that are here because more detail was presented. Now, we also did, and I know that you've seen it, that created the 22 limited service positions. They had the money, they had as temporary, and they made their case to us that those should
The
be
conversion.
limited. Conversion to you can't really convert a limited service, but you can create a limited service. So like.
They have to be great, emergency, need temporary.
Right, so that happened in there, so we're agreeing with that. On 206.1, which is the criminal crime victims advocate, that is for the same reason in 205. They had asked for, this was where the 14 advocates, 14 deputy state's attorneys and 14 administrative supports. This is in that whole ask that they had, and so we definitely agree with that, and this will hopefully help a great deal with decreasing the caseload. In 208 and 209, which is public safety, that's in that same, although it says it's a technical correction. From the time the administration brought us the first budget, and then after there was a lot of confusion with some of the positions being split. I think we finally have it in the correct place. After multiple attempts of moving here, moving there, does it go there? And we've moved it, and then information has become available that putting it in the right spot. We have great hopes that this is now the final landing place, and that it's correct, and agree with that.
Hope so.
Yeah. Now, 338 gets a little trickier, and I miss Representative Squirrel when it comes to this, because this is his area of expertise, and he has sent us notes, but we agree with it. But I just wanted it to be clear when we met that because of some of the moving parts on B317, that we haven't gotten to that part yet. There's
connections between
Yes.
317 and 338.
right. But
Some of that
what's-
money's
yeah.
moving there.
Right, and there was I to sit down with some of my counterparts to get a little mapped out direction of the money, where it's going, what it's for, is really, really helpful. And I'm willing to share that with you at some point. But I think in the future, we might have some questions around 317, but we can talk about that when we get
I
there.
have a memory of 317. Oh,
And I don't want to surprise you with that, it's just that I don't think we're in that far off. We
Money
just had
with the
some
youth
questions.
services organizations, we would need to better understand some of that information, but that's unrelated to,
the youth services.
yeah, which is in B317, but this money is going to 317, so we're approving of the money transfer,
Exactly,
but not of the
within
317.
317.
Okay, the youth service bureau, that came in. As you know, we gave them a one-time last year, and we had received communication from Credit Income on behalf, and there are 5, including Spectrum, for example. Their problems with workforce and vacancies in their role in serving youth seem to be a community-based service that was not getting an increase when so many of the others, including the choices for care agencies, the DAs, the SSAs, and yet the youth service bureaus play a pretty important role in terms of supporting particularly kids that are kind of on the fringes and need help. So we were looking at that as part of that
Community package.
Yeah.
So in 339, which is the out-of-state feds, is really tied into that whole conversation with the Justice Reinvestment 2 piece, which is fun. I've had a conversation with our Corrections and Institutions Chair that I'm not sure if she's continuing, but my previous conversation with her, there was language, she's fine with the whole money piece, but there was something in language that was struck that I need to go do some homework on,
That we struck?
that you struck, that as a part of it, thinking, you know, maybe when things got moved around, I need to check with her about that struck language, so I apologize for not having that with me today, but if, I'll check in with her on that and with Representative Squirrel to make sure that they're okay with the current language in the Senate, or being struck, or
That's
does it
the
need to be?
that would be the E.
Yeah, the E.
B is fine,
B.
because the
Yeah.
moving the money is fine, because it's, and also on 338.1, the allocating the money to the community justice centers and women's reentry programs and the women's network against domestic violence. So we agree with all those.
We did, and I know that there were some questions about the 490, whether or not the Representative Shires indicated it was going to be shut up, but I see on the web report, it's very clear there, and so I don't think we need any language on that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the last.
So are
Oh,
you
go ahead.
saying there was language on out-of-state beds?
There was language, I'm gonna need to go check, there
Are we
was some
talking
sort of,
about injustice
Mhm.
reinvestment in terms of,
Mhm.
on
something that was struck maybe in an effort to clean up things that I think Alice really,
we need to
Representative
go
Evans
back.
might want to have a re-conversation about.
Well, we were, obviously, what we were, really important to us was getting a base for justice reinvestment.
Yeah.
And because if you kind of, and shifting the balance in some years, if, depending on what you had, it gets into that unpredictability, and if we're putting these, funding out to support those, you have to provide some assurance of stability. And that's, so we wanted to create a base, and that was the 900,000.
I think everybody's fine with that.
And,
I think something got swept with the baby with the bathwater on that one, so to speak, that she's like, but.
well,
Just
okay,
check.
Stephanie, can you make a note, maybe we can discuss this on our side as well.
To see what
And the language
And
that
I-
you're referencing, and as it relates to 339,
339.1 correctional services out of state beds, it's on pages 32 and 33 of the struck language section in our findings.
And I just want to make sure that our Chair of Corrections and Institutions has had a double chance to make sure that either she's okay with it being struck, or that there's something about it still that we have that she wants to make sure doesn't get
There were a
lost.
few things that were struck in that area, the previous ones that whether she wanted to retain them or not, so.
So we're gonna do a little more homework today on what was struck and trying to get our our minds wrapped around it. Yep, go ahead.
I was gonna say, it's on page 27 and 28 of struck language.
Well, I'm looking at E339, the
Yeah,
the language part.
Also
on
E335.
Yes, and I think she indicated to me it was like 335.
Yeah.
But I apologize for bringing it up without having a great deal more clarity around that, but I just wanted to put it on your radar screen.
Right.
So check on that.
okay.
A few pieces.
I'll tell you what we struck here in 335, and that was the liability. And that was,
Oh, that's probably true.
Senator Sears, from the judiciary perspective, said he could not agree to that liability language. That's what, was included there with the peer support program.
And I think she made a note
Right.
here, and
This
again,
is
yeah, the peer support.
This is still correctional out-of-state beds, on Teresa was rep, 37 and 27 and 28, which was, I think that we struck because we adjusted the base appropriation, so we didn't need it, but we need to just check.
That's,
Yeah,
that's,
that's-
yeah.
that's
That's,
why they struck it.
Right.
But if there's
There's something.
concepts in there that think, that
Right.
if you want to find out, need to be
Right.
retained in
Exactly,
some way.
right, that's what
Yeah.
we just needed to
Check
confirm.
this out.
okay, all right.
Those are just.
But, that was
But
on
the money's
335, on the peer support.
Peer support.
There was that additional language on liability.
Yes.
Yeah, we
You
discussed
read
that,
that,
yes,
Representative Wood is solid on that.
joint justice, yeah, that's a That's a good add back.
Okay.
Deletion, you mean.
Well, deletion of there, yeah.
Oh, that.
That section, yeah.
Under
Don't show Senator Sears was that, okay.
But he probably needs some good news.
Yeah.
He's at least back from his second bout of COVID.
Yeah. That's good. I'm not in the building yet.
And that brings us to our last piece, which was what Senator Westman brought yesterday. And after taking a look at it,
You agree with your-
Yes, after, much deliberation, we decided to.
Long into the night.
We're glad you saw
well, there's so much more light in this room.
I know, the heat, not so much. I don't know what's happening here, but this room is actually the best and the brightest of any. The ones on the backside are dark. And you're in a woodchuck hole.
Yes, not only are we in a woodchuck hole, I mean,
Bat cave is.
we have a lot of
That's
space.
large.
But it's large, yes.
But the time of year that we also work on the budget is a time of year when it's really, really dark in the morning and it's really dark when you leave. And then just as soon as we pass the budget, spring explodes and time changes and everything gets brighter until we land it. So that's all we have today, unless you had something,
Now,
and we're gonna go back and work on making sure that we've got something more for 3:00.
question I have is, Senator Westman met with Representative Holly this morning.
Nice.
And I don't know if you have anything to update us at
I
this
know,
point.
he's gonna do some work around, I think we'll have some recommendation about, we both agreed that some money in this area will be needed.
Right.
I think a lot of how much that is and what that looks like will depend on what all the other issues are and how much room we have to do that. But also, I think going forward, that the issue is going to need to look at. And I think just who looks at it and the way it gets looked at, we'll continue talking.
Right.
There is a piece of this that one of the most disturbing things that, from my point of view, that adult basic education is saying is that if you're a student that is coming through the traditional K-12 system, you drop out and you go, it's a much easier process to get in than the testing system that is set up for particularly English language learners, which I think for a number of us, it causes us problems.
I mean, that's already a barrier that they make it harder.
Yeah, and they make it harder and I think for all of us, a lot of these new Americans, or in the future sometime will be new Americans, they have a lot of skills, and it would be a good population, particularly from the commerce aspect, to get them in the workforce.
So we have two different groups, so, we've got those that are adults, and some of them are very highly trained, and educated. And then we have, the under 21, where we're dealing with, the high school equivalency. So,
Although there's a lot of older people that are doing high school graduation as well. It's not just the 18 to 21.
but the question is the entitlement that comes, I believe,
The federal testing.
well, no, that comes even with our own,
You're entitled to high school.
high school and state
Right.
law.
Right,
So, which is different if you're above, you don't have that same entitlement.
right.
It's not saying it's not an important service, I'm just talking about the use of the education fund, to support, who they're supporting.
Right.
Which students should
Right.
be supported, and so I'm just wondering, well,
We put in general
you
fund.
put in general, what we've been looking at is the level and the decline of the education support that's gone to the adult education system. And so because of that decline, that's why they're coming in and saying, we need to make up the difference, because the number of people needing the service hasn't changed. But the amount of funding from the Agency of Education has declined fairly
I'm
precipitously.
sure you've seen the
Yeah,
chart.
You were showing,
Yes.
So, the question is, are there ways that in fact, is it administratively, can we deal with that? That seems to be a barrier for the individuals who are entitled to the high school education, to get some of that restoration, and is that
In
something?
that group.
Mhm.
In
Yeah.
the last 5 years, the ed fund contributed 3.5 million 5 years ago, and now is up down to 1.2.
Which is huge.
And the number of people and what this challenge is there, and this is a workforce issue. We're developing people who are gonna be in our workforce, so.
Senator Westman, do you think that decline from 3 to 1 is because they're just less population, or you say not only is there a decline, but now they have more
can't get through the
population?
testing system.
They can't,
So they don't.
so they don't get the funding
That's
because
right.
when they get tested, they go, you not testing.
At a proficient
They
level
were
to be able to move into the program to get their G.
So the question becomes
It's
one of, is that
really-
administratively something we can deal with, or is it, so what is it? So, and then of course, there's the larger issue, and that's the workforce issue.
Right.
Yes.
And that gets funded, so we're really talking about where the education fund, was and what is
Needs the
appropriate.
workforce. Mhm.
And it's certainly, their education fund is, if you're talking about 35-year-old,
Right, there's a
then we-
different
then,
approach
and
than
a
when you're
different
15.
funding, and a different
And a
funding
different-
stream.
right.
So the question becomes one of what options we might have relative to the education fund and the testing requirements.
Right.
And that needs to be explored, but you can see it's a.
It's a bigger boom up. Thank you. for
Yeah,
working on
I
it.
talked to Rep. Mahali, he said,
Yeah,
yeah,
and,
conversation.
I would just say, we put, this present budget year, we put 700,000 into one time to fill the hole. Last year, we put 350,000, so it went
And now
down
we
to
may
million.
need this.
And now in this budget, they're asking for 1.5 million. And a piece of the concern is, how much of this is really education? And what's the balance between the general fund and, I think no one wants adult basic education to not be successful with this population.
That is absolutely.
So
true.
so
So you're
the
gonna
350, I would just say, was also during COVID, so it was a smaller amount, it was sort of a post-COVID thing, so it's hard to use that as a year to compare. That's all I'm
Well,
saying, because we had to
and
increase.
we
it.
need to dig out the numbers on, particularly, if we look at just the adult basic education in Chittenden County, it's over 1,000 individuals. And, yeah.
The VA, Vermont
With
Adult
the,
Learning,
with the age
that's in
ranges,
Addison
do
County.
you have the age ranges, Rich?
I have the age ranges, I don't have the totals, but I do. It looks like the, single largest group, neck and neck between.
Is that what I forwarded to you?
16, yeah, well, Howard sent that, yes. But the age group from 25 to 44 is a huge group.
And that-
Okay,
That's
that
part of
would
the
be-
reason.
That would be outside the.
That's what I'm trying to get at.
Right,
Yeah.
but the people who are English language learners has gone up dramatically, the people who have
It makes a
disabilities.
difference, their age makes a difference.
Right, right, and the
They aren't-
funding source, but-
They aren't all outside the ed fund because there were contracts through school districts that took these adults in and they go through this. There's a testing process that goes through, and that testing process, you have to have a certain level of proficiency. And it's like,
Are you saying that those contracts that they have with schools are for adults of older?
they go through the same program.
Through the same program, but about what the education fund should fund versus what other funding
Right.
source, that's what we're trying to figure
Well,
out here.
What they do is they can't pass the test. If they can't pass the test, they can't enter the program with the schools to draw down any education.
So they
And
need the
these are the
support
under
to get,
21
just to get.
No, this is the people that are older.
older.
And that's federal funds. That's not the entitled, the high school graduation diploma thing, that green line that's on the top, that's federal funds.
No, that's it. It was ed fund.
Okay, that's the bottom
The
line.
bottom of the,
Was the
the
federal funds.
what was federal fund, that hasn't changed.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Line.
Right. So you and Representative Mahaly will continue to work on maybe come forward with a package
I
that.
think the most important thing is because we're only gonna scratch the surface. Is that we get together the right people to come back with recommendations and early enough so the administration and everyone can feel comfortable with moving ahead from this. You know, I would say to you, if the administration is gonna take a look at this and be a partner in this,
Yeah.
we need to get something in the fall, not so late that they couldn't take a look at this also.
So you're working on that.
And I guess that there's a nexus here as well, because we've added money to the refugee and asylees for workforce.
For workforce,
And
yes.
this is exactly connected to that.
Yes, it is.
So if in fact, we need to put some money, and that's general fund, that's a one-time as well. But if there's a direct connection, I would think, with the population here.
Certainly an overlap, big overlap.
So it's almost as if with the general fund, you get them up, get their testing up to the level that they qualify for the next level of funding.
Or we need to see, are there flexible, can we be flexible about that testing requirement and what
Oh.
is.
If there's state requirements,
Yeah,
then
we should be able to.
Well,
to run.
required by the feds to do the test, but as I understand it from adult basic education, there is flexibility around the questions. And not every state uses that test to get as a ramp to go into adult basic education. That's the place that I would say, we're not
Laser on it.
we're not going to, in this conference
No.
committee,
No.
figure that out. Somebody's gonna have to do that.
Yeah.
But, you know, the disturbing thing in what APB sent is, they are held to a higher standard to earn a high school diploma than students in the public school system who often do not face the same barriers to education. That's a disturbing.
That's a
It
double
just-
barrier.
it seems like an oxymoron that you have to test into adult basic ed.
Yes,
I mean, that it's,
Yeah, you would
so
think you
there's a
get
lot to
tested,
look at
you
there.
get tested for
There's a lot
placement
of-
of where
I
you
don't think
fall.
we're gonna
No,
solve it.
but you and Rep. Mahaly will have a
Well,
proposal.
I
But
think
we're
that-
working, he
Right.
said he was gonna go back and.
Okay.
Well, I think we're missing
Now it's-
one element here, and that is the agency of education. It's gotta be part of
Well, I
this.
think in part of this was a recommendation. He said to me that your Commerce Committee had a recommendation.
Commerce had the recommendation and so did House Education
On funding aid.
on funding it.
I think everybody's in agreement. It's an
Yeah, it's
essential
just that
service.
now we're,
It's just the extent to which the cost is over time shifting to the general fund. What is causing it? Is there some flexibility in terms of, around the testing and the requirements that we may have self-imposed that need to be looked at? And we would have to look to the Agency of Education to help us with that. That will take time. So I think the question becomes one of language, who's gonna be looking at it, the time, and then what we do to sort of
I just,
bridge.
from my point of view, AOE, adult basic education, and someone from Susanna Davis's area ought to sit down and be part of the group that is looking. That's just a start. I'm not saying there shouldn't be others or who it should
Right,
be,
but they should be included.
but
it starts there.
at least at that
Yeah.
base, that's where I would.
Yeah.
So it's safe to say that the need for more and more money is exposing a whole lot more issue with the whole working of it that needs to be examined at the same time.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
And but we are gonna have to rely on the agency to give us, you know, what we have, where we can be flexible and where we don't, and how that might alter how we braid the money together.
I think Representative Mahaly will actually enjoy that.
You wanna put him on this?
Conversation.
Yeah.
He's
Just
delightful.
joy. Yeah, that's actually like, I'm very, very lucky that we have the committee that we do and.
So I guess that's, we're gonna have to figure out money, bridge money, and then language to
Right.
get that,
to get to a better tomorrow.
Well, right, it'll take a little
That's kind of
time.
schmaltzy, but okay. Did
Okay,
that come out of my mouth? Yes, it did.
How about just this afternoon?
So we'll go back and we'll work now. I am not gonna go to the floor. We don't have the training, so we had that whole training yesterday, which actually was quite good.
Very good.
But now we need to go to work so we can bring back some more packages for you.
Okay.
All right.
And I see people here from housing, and I'm not sure that we're gonna get to housing today because we've got the S-100 and we've got to
Right.
crosswalk that. So if your people are here thinking we're gonna do housing, I would suggest that that would not be
So
today.
we have S-100 in our committee room today from 1 to 3, because it is now moved out of Ways and Means, and we'll continue to talk with that, and see what we can do to move that, or what pieces of it are gonna move along.
Okay. And
Yeah.
and how much of S-100 we have in the budget already? And, we'll take it through.
Right.
Okay.
All right.
But I don't think that'll be this afternoon, because
I
you're
don't think
still
it'll be this
working on it.
afternoon.
I don't think so.
If
We can
you're
safely
here-
say that.
I'm just saying, people sometimes are sitting here for hours and we're not gonna get to it. I announced what
And
we
then
were
they
doing
watch,
one
they
day.
watch.
Oh, you can watch. I mean, we had a room full and I said, this is what we're gonna do today, and all of a sudden, everybody left. I'm interested.
Right.
So, okay.
All right, we'll go work,
Okay.
we'll go work.
Yeah. Maybe we get some heat.
Call me if you need me, or if there's anything, to keep looking at our schedule of timing and trying to figure out when do we put things on what.
Okay, yeah, are you heading back right now?
No, we go, yeah, we can go offline.
We'll go